now the industry appreciates that actually the lifetime value of their client is easily double, if not triple, the original project value, if you take into account the service relationship for the next 10 plus years.
Welcome to the FlyWheel Effect, the podcast where ambition meets expertise in the world of luxury home services. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a small business owner, or a forward-thinking professional, this is your platform for growth, profit, and prosperity. Each episode, we dive deep into how to leverage data for smarter business decisions and share insights that help you transition from technician to visionary. Let's jump in.
Welcome to another episode of the FlyWheel Effect. This is Brent Sonnek-Schmelz, normally with Matt Bernhath, but he is off whitewater rafting with his daughters. So luckily I have another great guest here, Joseph Kolchinsky. Joey's the founder and CEO of OneVision, company focused on streamlining service operations for the pro smart home installer. Joey, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Brent.
How was your Father's Day with your kids yesterday?
Phenomenal with just one of my kids because my daughter went traveling with her grandmother. And so I managed to go and take my son and spend the day with my dad and shovel 8 tons of gravel around his gravel driveway.
That's great.
Good way. I feel like my gift was that I took his back pain and moved it to my back.
That's like, Father's Day is one of these oddball. I mean, as a relatively new father now, it's like, what is it really for, right? Like, is it to give us an opportunity to do yard work without distraction, or what? Like, it's like, oh, all right, great. I don't know about you, but that's kind of my feeling of Father's Day.
Yeah, it was nostalgic for me too. I grew up as a kid doing a lot of yard work in my family's yard. We didn't hire services to do anything, so a lot of good opportunity for memory sharing. From what it was like doing that as a child, and then to watch my 6-year-old have his little kid shovel and have him try to move some gravel around was cute too. Yeah, so we got some good time in.
That's some good time. Hope you got a generational picture in there too.
Yeah, missed the opportunity, and I found myself actually wishing I hadn't last night. I'm like, damn, didn't get a photo.
Yeah, that would have been good. Each with your shovels next to the pile of gravel.
That's right.
Would have been perfect. All right, so cool. So Joey, OneVision's this great platform that helps integrators with their service operations as well as driving recurring revenue. But you kind of came about this as an integrator first, right? You were out there in the field installing on projects. What was it about that experience that made you want to go found OneVision?
Yeah, actually, my experience went back even before that. Before I was an integrator, I was really an IT service provider for high net worth families in the Boston area. I like to share that actually my first gig was ripping CDs to MP3s. And it always makes me laugh when I share that story with people in the room who are like, what's a CD? What do you mean?
Right.
But that was in 2001 when I was a high schooler. And from 2001 to 2010 or 11, I was focused exclusively on doing tech support for computers and mobile devices, email, calendar, contacts, photos, music, what I call personal technology, really effectively bringing the Apple Store Genius Bar into the home. And that model or that business really demanded a service model. It was all about service. There was no marking up on computers or iPhones or anything like that. And so before I had even become an integrator, I had already built up roughly $100,000 a month in recurring revenue from 40 families. On average, each family was paying $2,500 a month for me to be their full-blown service professional, tech manager for all their tech needs in the home. Really? I was instantly available whenever they needed me. If they shattered an iPhone, I had a new one loaded with all their data within a couple hours. And I was just their tech manager for all the personal tech issues in their lives. The interesting thing is that support experience that they had contrasted quite a bit with the professional smart home installers that they had doing the smart home part of their home, the smart home system part of their house. And so they would ask me, oh, my integrator's taking a while to get back to me. Can you just go fix this thing with my remote, and then they would show me this like big rack in their basement. It'd be a little overwhelming. And I eventually got into the integration side, became a Control4 dealer in about 2010. And at the beginning, I actually thought I needed to be an integrator in order to keep doing the service thing.
Right.
And there were actually integrators in the Boston market who had asked me, they said, Joey, how about we do the smart home systems and you then do all the service afterwards? And at the time, I really believed that I had to do the project in order to be able to do the service. I didn't quite appreciate, how you could share those responsibilities. And it took me until 2016 to realize and recognize that there was an opportunity to actually focus exclusively on helping integrators operationalize and streamline their service departments while allowing them to focus on what they're really good at, which is the smart home project side of things and the in-person relationship with clients, right? But help alleviate the burden of everything else so that they could focus on growing and running their business. And in 2016, that's when we launched that part of that platform.
That's great. And it's really interesting. There's two things I really take away from that. One is that you had families that were so frustrated with their tech. I mean, obviously these people had a lot of money. You said wealthy families in Boston, which is among the wealthiest anywhere, that were still willing to spend a couple $1,000 a month with you because they were just frustrated with whatever it was, their phone, their stereo, their computer, their router, and they just couldn't handle it. And probably what it was is that they were getting fights with their kids, right? About the
All
stuff.
of the above.
All of the above.
All of the above.
And so it's just hand it off. And that's just that pain point is really not appreciated enough by our industry generally. And then that these installers, integrators, who are installing several $100,000 or potentially, I don't know, but, could be smaller, could be larger,
right,
installations, really wanted nothing to do with their clients after they did the project, which always boggles my mind. Like, there's this saying that your best client is your best customer is the customer you already have, right? And integrators are the exact opposite. It's like, I want nothing to do with my customers. I just want the new project that has all the shiny bells and whistles.
I think a lot of that's changing though, Brent. That 10 years ago, I think absolutely the majority of the industry would have totally agreed. And the siren song of ITG back in the day, and even overseas, was you won't have to deal with your clients as much. Right. And I think now it's matured a little bit. I think now the industry appreciates that actually the lifetime value of their client is easily double, if not triple, the original project value, if you take into account the service relationship for the next 10 plus years.
Right.
And that has caused integrators to say, wait a second, I don't want to, let's say, hire OneVision so that I never deal with my client again. Now they're saying, I want to hire OneVision so that I can maximize on this opportunity with my clients and with my business as a whole. That's really exciting because it's actually remarkable how much of a shift there's been in the tone of the conversation in the industry in such a short period of time.
When do you think that shift started happening?
Sometime before today and after 2016.
I got it.
I don't know, probably COVID. COVID was probably a good band right there where that happened. I think, we had many partners on our platform who were amazed at the consistency of their service department revenue while the rest of their business nosedived. And, I think that probably many integrators saw that as well. I think the other, headwind that they're dealing with is you've got margins, margin compression on the hardware side and resale side really just forces you to look at your service department differently and recognize that the value of your business is in the labor and the relationships with the clients. And, lastly, a lot of integrators have also started to appreciate that the margin profiles of their two sides of the business are very different. On the project side, you have hardware margins that can buoy lower labor rates that you need to have to possibly be competitive with other trades. But on the service side, you're not dealing with long projects and extended, like multiple days of install at one house, and you're not getting the benefit of hardware margins. So on the service side, you might only be billable for 4 out of 8 hours a day. and you're not really selling much hardware there. So you need to be able to make the margin on the labor. So I think all of these concepts, have been swirling around and, honing the focus of the integrator to appreciate, what their business actually looks like.
Yeah, I think it's hard though for them, and I'm glad you're seeing this shift. One of the big difficulties that I see is the way the businesses are structured. If you're going to send a truck out to a home, it's going to cost you $600-700, right? But can you really charge $600-700 to fix a remote? You can't. So it's how do you make it, either do it remotely, which I think you guys get into a little bit, or how do you deal with it in a more cost-effective way? Because if you're trying to operate a service business with a project business scope and costing structure, you're gonna have some trouble, which I think is one of the reasons why they really hated the service model previously.
That's right. I actually had one of the most sort of formative conversations I had with a mentor in my early 20s, and a bunch of my clients were my mentors, through building this business. It was actually my brother. My brother and I went out to the movies one night, and this was when I was still running the business very much by myself. So I was fielding all the service calls directly to my cell phone, and I got pulled out of the movies, and I was super frustrated. And I came back huffing and puffing, angry that I missed the movie. And, my brother asked me this question. He said, how much money would you need to charge so that when this happens right now, when you get pulled out of the movie, you actually pick up the phone with a smile and you're happy to take care of the client,
right?
As opposed to being frustrated. And it was this light bulb moment, because it just made me appreciate that I don't have to actually sit here and be upset with this dynamic. There's a variable I can control. I can simply charge enough money to make it worth my while so that I'm happy to take care of the client. And as I've had many conversations with integrators over the years, that has also been a light bulb moment for them, right? I have asked them the same question. I've said, I agree, let's reduce the need for after hours, or weekend truck rolls. But regardless of what we do, there's still going to be those emergencies once in a while.
Right.
How much do you need to charge so that you and your team are happy to do it? How much money do you need to charge so you can afford to pay your team an on-call rate so that they feel appreciated when they have to go on a Saturday to go take care of the client? What's that rate? What's the fee? And when you ask that question, the integrator, the business owner, all of a sudden feels in control.
Right.
Which is totally true. It's like, whoa, you're okay, cool. I guess, yeah, if they're going to pay me $300 a month for priority service, and then I get to still charge an after hours rate of $200 an hour or whatever the rate is, yeah, I'll do it. It's like, okay. So we've now found a balance here where you are happy to do what the client wants you to do, and they are happy to pay for it. And if they don't want to pay for it, then you're not obligated. And that has opened, I think, their people's minds to thinking that they don't have to be owned by the client or their business. They can be in control and create an environment that's successful for them.
How often, when you have that conversation, there's two responses. Really, this sounds great. Let's go do it. The other response is, oh, they're never going to go for it. The clients are never going to pay for it. Right. And then I'm sure they respond like that all the time. But then if you convince them to make the ask, they're really surprised when it's accepted.
So actually, you're right. There's a lot of really interesting stuff that happens there. First, it's also, I think, helping a business owner appreciate that your job is not to wake up every day and just do whatever the client wants on their terms. Mm-hmm. Our job here is to actually do things on our terms and on their terms. You find it, an equivalent business, a good business relationship there, right? Where they are willing to pay money to buy the services that you are willing to provide for the money that you're charging. And if a client says they don't want it, cool. Where else are they going to get it? Then they've simply said, I don't want it. Imagine if a client told you one day, I want, instead of these $100 speakers in the ceiling, I actually want these $1,000 speakers in the ceiling, but I don't want to pay $1,000. What would you do? You would say, sorry, that's right. So it's actually internalizing the confidence that your labor is also a product, right?
Yeah.
And it is worth something.
And I think there's a mentality shift that I get with a lot of different home service providers and contractors that I talk to, is there's this fear of the no, right?
Yeah.
If I propose something and they say no, it's awful, right? There's something wrong,
Right.
as opposed to,
Right.
hey, people are allowed to ask, people are allowed to
Right.
say yes, people are allowed to say no, and
That's exactly it.
right, and that mentality is really is there's a shift to your service level, but then that mentality shift is the next point that I think if we can get past that, there's a lot of value to be created for clients and for the industry.
Right. And you mentioned earlier, right, how you asked how often are they surprised at the, response by the clients? All the time, right? As long as you present the changes and the options in a graceful way, right? No client wants to have the rug pulled out from under them. No one is saying you all of a sudden have to, you have to be a jerk about the way you're presenting your services. That's not at all what we're talking about here. We're talking about communicating a reasonable change with commitments to service, and you are now giving clients the option to choose if they would like to buy that service or not. And when you do that in a reasonable way, then 95% of your clients will actually have no problem engaging in this discussion and making a decision. I'm not saying 95% of them will buy it. I'm just saying 95% of them will be totally fine having the discussion and making a decision either way. And the cool part is they don't have to buy it for you to be happy. They may actually say, I don't want your remote support and I don't want priority scheduling. I'm simply happy and willing to wait for a scheduled appointment and I'll pay your hourly rate. Isn't that also a wonderful exchange?
Yeah.
Right. So not everyone, just like not everybody buys the $1,000 speakers, not everybody is going to buy your premium levels of service. Will you have a few, extreme clients who are unreasonable and will put up a stink? Yes, that happens. And we have ways and levers to make sure that clients are taken care of. You can comp them, you can discount things, you can have a conversation. And then at some point you can just draw a line and say, we're no longer giving you free speakers or we're no longer giving you free support, right? But, it's amazing how often clients actually say, I can't believe you didn't do this sooner because we've been wondering how you stay in business when we just keep calling you at 9:00 at night when you pick up the phone. We felt bad. Now, this makes sense. I'm really glad you made this change.
Yeah. Trading value is the key to everything. And it's right. It's not about money. It's really trading value. And the more you can get to that, the better off you are. You said one thing, a couple other things also. You talked about margin compression. I think this is actually one of the keys. If you look at in the customer integrator industry, where revenue used to come from as far on the hardware side compared to where it is now, whereas otherwise big home theater, big AV installations, that stuff was 50-60% margin or higher. Now it's a lot of networking, a lot of what traditionally was called IT, maybe 25 to 40. So you got to pick up that money somewhere. If the budget's still $200,000, but you're making less money on hardware, can you charge more for labor, or what's the next step? And this service component, I think, is one of the reasons what they're realizing, right?
Yeah, and there's an example I like to think about that really ties the two together really well. If we go back 20 years, the industry used to sell TVs for $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 a pop, right? We all remember the Pioneer plasmas, right?
Right.
Or the Runco displays, right?
They're great.
And the margins on that would be 50%, right? Now, they would only break once every, they would rarely break, right? Think about like the AV experience. The worst thing that would happen with the VCR was the 12 o'clock sign would flash. That's it, right? Otherwise, you didn't really have problems with a system like that. And so what you would do when you would occasionally have a problem is the integrator would be willing to simply take care of the client any way they can once every few years, because they want to make sure the next time the client moves and they go and buy 5 or 10 more TVs, that they're going to buy them from the integrator, right? That makes a lot of sense. But let's look at what it looks like today. Today, the display is actually sold at cost effectively. There's almost no margin on displays, or very little compared to what it used to be. And now, and the Apple TV costs, is also at no margin. And it now breaks 10 ways to Sunday. It's not as reliable as it used to be. And it breaks for reasons that are completely out of your control. Right? You've got HDMI issues, you've got Netflix streaming issues, maybe Amazon's AWS is down, maybe you've got iCloud password problems, maybe the credit card is expired. Who knows what the issue is? So you've got way more problems, but the margin on the hardware isn't there at all. So why are we leaning in and doing service? Right? We're no longer incentivized to try to get the next sale because you don't get money on TVs and hardware. So we've got to now change the model in order to even fix that very micro story right there. Forget about the idea of also, or not forget about, but also we need to think about where else we get margin in the project, like shades and lighting and categories where margin still exists.
Yeah, and it's two sides, right? Like you can either look at service as being filling that gap of now you can't provide all the service free because you don't have the margin up front to cover it, or two, hey, we actually need to figure out additional streams of income because we need to figure out how to grow, and we want to stay in front of this customer all the time, right? As you said, right. The best way to get that next project is actually to be their friend in between the two projects.
Right.
And recurring revenue helps drive that if you're doing it well. As you said, answering the phone with a smile when you're in the movie theater.
Right. Yeah. And I think that, it's I think it's easy for you and I to talk about recurring revenue being the answer to it, but I think it's also sometimes helpful to break down how did we get from charging nothing to charging recurring? Because a lot of integrators ask, but why can't I just charge per phone call or whatnot? And I think taking a moment to sort of step by step walk through how we get to recurring can be helpful. Because especially this day and age when everything is a subscription, there's a lot of pressure and people ask like, oh, does it have to be another subscription? And I think in this case, the recurring totally does make sense. And the reason why is because there's an investment required by the integrator to create a reliable, consistent presence on the phone or via email. Forget about 24/7, even if we just say 9 to 5.
Right.
9 to 5, Monday to Friday, client calls in, they need to have a quick pickup. This isn't, an issue that can just wait till the next day. Like if we wait a few minutes, the client's already moved on with their lives and that issue is no longer an urgent matter. It's only urgent when they try to use it. So you have to be very quickly available in order to be providing value. But to be quickly available, you basically have to be staffed up all the time. And the client's not using you all the time. So they might go a month, 2 or 3 without using you, but they're still benefiting from the peace of mind and the confidence that you are going to guarantee a response when they need you. And so that's why charging a recurring fee makes sense for the kind of service and value that's being provided here. And again, the integrators have been surprised quite a bit at the positive response from their client base with the offerings.
Well, and they should realize that if you think of a higher end home, that higher end home probably has a couple of different subscriptions for their house. They're going to have a security contract, which may or may not be the integrator. If they have a pool, they have a pool contract where the pool to take open, close, plus all between. Right. They probably have an HVAC service contract where if their HVAC goes down, they're going to have someone show up right away. I mean, these all add up, but when you think of a house that's $1 million to $20 million or whatever the number is, the owners of the house, one, aren't going to fix it themselves. 2, they don't have time even if they could.
Right.
And 3 is like they want their house functioning so that when they're in it, it works. So
right.
And on the integrator side, really, there's HVAC, there's HVAC, electrical, plumbing. Those things have to work. After you get past those 3, probably the technology experience in the home, whether it comes to the TV, the lights, whatever, is probably the next level of importance.
Yeah, right. I got to tell you though, I am willing to put up with a toilet that just runs for more than I'm willing to put up with my TV not working. So I don't know, or my internet not working, right? So I would even put technology higher in many circumstances than some of those other systems.
The toilet running, yes. The hot water heater, no. Right?
I agree.
Right? I know all these people are out there with the cold showers every day. Like I haven't jumped on that wagon yet. I still need the hot water. So depends. But yeah, but plumbing's probably of those 3. I'm not plumbing and electrical. I don't have a contract typically, but HVAC, which is a little more complex, and maybe it's plumbing, electrical haven't figured out pricing models. Their hourly rates tend to be a little lower. But when it comes to technology, like if your TV's down and your kids are going nuts, if you have young kids especially, you want someone showing up, because there's actually nothing more frustrating than a remote that won't turn on the TV.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, totally true. Yeah, it's a pretty common request that we get through the support team.
So when you're thinking about, so now let's kind of like talk a little bit more. We talk about philosophically about this. What has been the response of integrators after a period of time of starting a recurring revenue model, not necessarily with the service side, but on the revenue side, and how they view that as affecting their business? Do they think about it any differently?
Yeah. So integrators oftentimes will come to us asking for help to alleviate the problem, alleviate the pain, I should say. And the pain is clients are calling all the time, and this is becoming unbearable to manage.
Right.
Can you help alleviate the pain? And eventually, when the pain subsides, what they're able to start to see and focus on, and they have the clarity of mind to pay attention to, is the revenue opportunity that's in front of them and the gold mine that they've been sitting on top of this whole time. And so I think that what we've been focused on is trying to compress that timeline as much as possible to help alleviate the pain as quickly as possible and help transition the integrator, should they be interested in it, to go after that revenue opportunity and help them do that. And so, I think more often these days than in the past, what we're also seeing is I think we're seeing integrators who have come to us already recognizing that there's a revenue opportunity and attempting to develop that on their own in-house, and then eventually realizing, okay, I don't have the scale to necessarily do this in a sustainable way, but I see the opportunity and I've built a program and now I want help to take it further. So that's more evidence of just the, maturity of the market, and that, now people are coming to us with programs already in place, asking for help to take it to the next level, as opposed to coming to us like they did 10 years ago with their arms flailing, just saying, whatever you say you can do, sure, great, let's just do something because this is very painful.
Right. And so with OneVision specifically, I think it's really great they're recognizing the revenue, because I have to imagine that revenue, when you see thousands of dollars coming in a month that didn't exist before, and your costs are not dramatically higher as a result of that. Like, it's one thing to trade dollars in costs and revenues, another to see revenue, incremental revenue without equivalent incremental costs. Good question. Did they then try to expand that offering even more? Like, do they see that, hey, how much revenue can I do this? Like, do they become more like the security industry, which lives on recurring revenue, than the integrator market, which is essentially a project business, and the recurring revenue is a sidecar?
Yeah, I think the jury's still out on what that future might look like. I think that for sure integrators many integrators see the success of these premium service offerings and recognize that with some simple tweaks of their sales process, they can get to nearly 100% attach rate, right, of a service subscription to each project. And that for sure happens. I think what I see happen before you get to that point is integrators recognize, if you're growing revenue in the best of businesses, that means you're also creating satisfied customers.
Right.
And I think that is the core point here, is I'm doing something in my business that's making my clients happier and I'm making money doing it. So yes, let's absolutely pour more fuel on that fire. What else can I do to keep making my clients happier and make more money while I'm doing it, right? That's effectively the definition of product market fit right there. And, integrators who recognize that they have it want to continue to grow it. And then they say, okay, how do I grow this? Can I expand my offerings so that I'm now taking care of more technology for my clients? I have some partners on our platform who want to start supporting computers, for example. But then there are other partners, other integrators who are saying, all right, let's not worry about computers. how do we get more of our clients to buy this? Because we recognize that when they are a member of our platform and they're taking advantage of our premium services, they're happier, right? And they're referring more business to us. So now they're working upstream into their sales process saying, how do I now get higher attach rates with my project sales?
Are integrators that you're working with starting to include the service contract in their bid right up front?
Yeah, it's one of the big developments that we came up with our software. So our platform's fully integrated. It's a suite of services doing tier one support with the software to manage all of the service operations. And the service operations really start all the way at the proposal, right? When you are bidding a job, you need to list service somehow on that proposal. And, Portal and D-Tools and iPoint and Project 360, many of them now have ways to do that. But then from there, when you win the proposal, you really need to track that service subscription all the way through to the close of the project. And then, maybe there's a grace period, and then that first, billing, and maybe it's an annual bill. Maybe you've actually already collected the revenue on your invoice, but somehow you need to track the renewal a year later or 2 years later, however much you pre-collected, right? And so one of the big developments we've made in the last few years is the ability for our partners to pre-sell these subscriptions while at the same time activating service and
Right.
getting clients to go through an activation flow. And that has really allowed, our partners to do exactly what you're saying. Go and put it right on the proposal and have the conversation right up front and have clients gain the peace of mind of knowing that they've not only just bought their system, but they've also paid for remote support and priority scheduling for the next 3 years. That's definitely a popular way to go.
So with you shifted last year your business model more, I think, from a rev share to a service based, different pricing. In that shift, what other benefits, or maybe go dive a little bit into the why you did that, and then understanding the shifts in the marketplace you're seeing as a result.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. It was a really big change for our company. And I think it really speaks to actually the growth of the industry, as well as our own recognition of how do we match where the industry is at in terms of what the industry needs. So if we go back to the beginning, at the beginning, the industry was saying, just help me solve service, whatever it looks like. And it was just eliminate the pain. It was a pain relief model. And that was a really difficult problem to solve for. And we came up with a pricing model that at the time worked, but actually started to show its weakness as partners on our platform became more mature and became more successful. And the pain was no longer the priority. Now it was actually, how do I go and grow my revenue? And furthermore, the industry was maturing. The industry was starting to come to us and say, I've already got a solution that looks like this, or I'm already part of the way doing this. And I just want your help here, or want your help here. And our, one size fits all approach was no longer a good fit for the market. It was a good fit back at the beginning. It just no longer was a couple of years ago. So we took our model and we opened it up a bit to allow integrators to come to allow us to meet integrators where they were at in their service operations. Some integrators simply wanted our help doing tier one tech support. They were going to manage the rest on their own. Some integrators said, I want you to handle it all right up front. Some integrators would become very successful on our platform and then say, you know what, I'm going to handle this piece by myself. Can you keep handling this piece? And so that has allowed us to really meet the market wherever it's at and help the integrator who's either doing nothing or doing a lot take their whole service operation to the next level using whatever element of our platform works best for their business.
Yeah, and from my understanding, with OneVision, you can handle everything, meaning inbound calls, figuring out how to get it there, logistics, selling the service contracts, everything soup to nuts, or as you said, a bunch of little pieces. And maybe go a little deeper on that, but understanding kind of what's the appeal in that what they call it, an a la carte operation for the integrator.
I think so it really comes down to meeting them where they're at, right? So some integrators who come to us and say, look, I just need someone to handle my tier one remote tech support. We can do that. But then we have to start asking the question, okay, what's going to happen when that client who did not, so the integrator is saying, I now want to put together my own programs and I'm going to take care of telling my clients about it and I'm going to process all their credit cards. We ask, okay, cool. What happens when a client who is not paying for your remote support offering calls in and wants remote support? If we don't have access, if we're not processing those subscriptions with you, then all we can do is tell them, well, someone next week will get back to you to do that. Our advanced support team will get back to you. But the client wants remote support right there and then. So how do we upgrade them in the moment? So the next level of our offering allows us to manage those subscriptions for the integrator on their behalf so that they don't have to be the ones managing that process. And now when a client calls in, we're able to actually upgrade them instantly on the fly because our systems are now fully integrated. Our support team has access to the subscription management tool, and we're able to actually process the client's credit card right there on the fly. And then once that process is done, some integrators say, well, okay, that's awesome. That handles a lot of my existing clients really well that I've sold, and some clients who then call in and aren't necessarily paying for premium support. But how do we start to proactively reach out to clients? And some integrators start on our platform saying, I'm going to call the clients myself and I'm going to go introduce all of this to them. And that it's hard. It's tedious. The conversation is a new kind of conversation. It can sometimes be laden with a lot of guilt because it's the CEO who's been providing this service for free is now the one who's also saying we're going to start charging money. And so our membership sales team that is handling all of these outbound conversations and inbound, even when clients call in asking questions, is now able to go and accelerate the success and the sale of these service subscriptions by engaging with our partners' client base on their behalf. And the key thing to appreciate about all of this is that it's all white label.
Right.
One thing that is totally at the core of everything we do is that this is the integrator's relationship with their client. And that means that their brand is the one that the client knows and trusts. So everything has to be done with their brand. When we pick up the phone, we have to say Acme Integration, Joey speaking. When we call out to the client, it has to say Acme Integration's caller ID. When we email the client, it's got to come from support@acmeintegration.com. When we charge the client's credit card, it has to say Acme Integration on the credit card statement. So all of that is really important so that the client and the integrator maintain that relationship, and we can then take it as far as it can possibly go, built on that trust.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things you pointed out there is one, there's still a level of fear of handing over clients, and I think that's a big piece that companies like yours have to overcome. Second, I think it's really interesting that when you have that when you're really thinking about providing service, what you've created is a technology company, a tech platform that allows you to do all these things, be white labeled, provide great service, manage all the different ways that you're going to work with that client and that customer anywhere in the country on any number of systems. So it's that tech platform, that background that you built is so much more robust than what anyone could ever do on their own.
Totally agreed. It's absolutely what we're focused on is how do we enable the small local business, which represents the entire integration industry effectively. How do we enable them to operate at the level of consistency and quality that a large company is able to do, but while maintaining their local small relationship feel, their personal relationship feel that they've built up. And you're right, we use a lot of technology to make that happen, to marry the scale of our team with the local bespoke offering of the integrator.
Yeah, and you make it feel bespoke still to the end client, which is what they're paying for.
A lot of the testimony, the reviews that our integrators get on Google or Facebook or wherever, they will oftentimes mention members of our team by name.
Right.
And there's some clients who call in frequently enough that they end up talking to the same people on the team. And, there's almost a rapport that's developed, it might be about favorite sports teams or rival sports teams or whatnot, or Mrs. Smith's cat, we hear these stories amongst our team because the people we hire really care. They
Right.
really, really care to deliver a great experience. You can't be doing this job if you don't care. So, when you hire people who really care and you give them really great tools that enable them to do their jobs easily, you end up having a magical result. And that's our job as a company, is to eliminate that friction so that people who care can go do fantastic work, whether it's our team on our integrators' behalf or it's the integrators being able to go do it within their own businesses and not get bogged down by the demand for support all the time.
Yeah, I love that. Create a magical result. It kind of triggers on Vital side. Our little mantra is create light bulb moments, in the people we're speaking to, which I think you guys do too, right? Hey, when a light bulb goes off about service, it can change a business. So you said service now essentially is really within the past decade, probably within the last 5 years, which is a blink of an eye in business terms. Where do you see this going, and how much is it going to change this integrator and really all home services business to switch to a focus on service instead of just project?
I think the way you said it there is the key. It's not instead of just projects, right? So I don't think one replaces the other. I think that successful integrators in the future will recognize that they have two divisions to their business and two distinct life cycles with their clients. There's the life cycle on the project side that we're all intimately familiar with. And then at the end of a project, there is the hopefully never-ending life cycle of ongoing service. And those two life cycles, they generally require different approaches, different pricing models, different cadences, different types of relationship management. The kind of person who's a fantastic service coordinator or account manager for service is actually a very different person who's good at project management and a very different person who's good at sales. So I think the leaders of these businesses will appreciate that they have two distinct portions of their business now and will pay an appropriate amount of attention and funnel resources appropriately to both sides of that business. There are some companies we know now where 50% of their revenue is in service.
Wow.
Yeah, we're not talking like a small business. We're talking like a few $1 million a year, and $1.5 to $2 million a year is now in service.
Right.
And then another couple millions in projects. That's a different business than what we used to have 10 years ago in this industry.
Now, and probably you have happier customers too.
That's right. Right. And more reliable growth going forward.
Yeah, that the shift from project to project and service, as this occurs over the next decade, I'm very curious to see where it ends up. I'm excited for this industry and all that.
Yeah.
That can make it really part of your business, because what it does is it also helps smooth out downturns, right? In a project-based business, when your projects dry up, your business dries up. If you have some service revenue, a big chunk of that's going to stick around.
That's right. I started my service business in the middle of the 2008 recession. That's when we think about how much recurring revenue I had developed with those clients in the Boston market. They weren't doing projects. All the home builds stopped. Even renovation projects stopped. All the one-time expenses stopped. But the ongoing expense of having to maintain an existing set of equipment that they already had in their home that they were all dependent on, that didn't go away. And I don't think it's any surprise, Brent, that we see a lot of overlap between the partners that we have, the customers that we have, the integrators that we have, and the integrators that you have. Vital.
Mm-hmm.
The business leader that recognizes that things are shifting in their business and requires, what got them here isn't going to be what gets them there, over the next several years, usually is looking at their business from multiple angles, including operations and finance, right? And Vital helps with that substantially. So that's why we tend to see a decent amount of overlap. Integrators will start with us, and then we'll see them go over to Vital, or they'll start with Vital and they'll come over to us. And, I think, our healthiest partners, the healthiest businesses on our platform probably are benefiting from your services as well.
Yeah. And those integrators, we can agree, are the really, really smart ones that use both of our services, right?
For sure. Yeah.
For sure.
But there are also some really smart ones that aren't. But for
Right.
sure, if they are using both
They're
of
really
us,
smart.
then yes, they are really smart. Yes.
One last question I have for you is a recent announcement with the Snap and Control4 acquisition by ADI and Resideo. I know that Control4 has a service platform that they've recently launched. How are you seeing reactions to OneVision or changes based on that announcement?
We could have a whole conversation, Brent, on that discussion alone.
Okay.
But I think the short of it is that we are really focused on helping integrators continue the relationship that they've built with their clients. We think that integrators they want to create a bespoke experience, and whatever a company can do to help an integrator do that successfully is, what this industry needs. I think that when a manufacturer attempts to step in and provide or do that tech support and get in the way of that relationship or get in the middle of that relationship, I think that could present, some friction points. And there's some questions that should be asked and integrators should make sure they get answers to, before they necessarily go down a path like that. And I think as we're seeing, Control4, got acquired by Snap. That was a little bit of dilution of the brand to some extent. It was like exclusively focused on residential integration. And once it was within Snap, Snap was a larger company, and still Snap presented really well as a company that was, for the industry, by the industry. Now being acquired by EDI, I think that there's questions like, well, EDI, distributes to security, et cetera, et cetera. And now EDI is going to be the one servicing my client. I think these are all questions that integrators are asking. And, I think that they're valid questions. Who's going to own the relationship with my clients? Who's in control of the messaging to my clients? And, what is the quality of the experience going to be? I'm not even saying the tech support, just the experience. What's the experience going to be like for my end user? If, I go down this path versus another path. And, those are big questions that I think every business owner needs to ask and needs to probably have an answer to as they embark down the service journey and then take their business to the next level.
No, that's good. It's that acquisition of Snap by ADI is going to cause so many questions over the next year until this thing gets finalized. It's going to be a while. And then
by the way, they're not all bad. There's going to be some really great things that hopefully come from this too, right? That this industry is a pretty small industry, and their small industries don't necessarily have a lot of room for multiple large companies. And scale can bring a lot of benefit, right? Scale brings research and development. Scale hopefully brings more stability. Scale brings higher quality products. Hopefully, there's a lot of benefit that comes from it. But will also, result in a bunch of questions, as you said, that everybody should make sure they're asking themselves.
That's good. Joey, this has been a great conversation. Any closing thoughts?
You and I still need to see each other up in Vermont.
Yep, we do.
So I'm looking forward to that.
We'll probably be going up in July at some point for a little while. We love the summers up there. The worst case, we got to go skiing. That would be the goal. Right. I can't wait. So cool. I appreciate your time here, Joey. This is great. This is Joey Kolchinsky, CEO of OneVision. Check it out, onevisionresources.com. And for those of you who are listening out there, who enjoyed this podcast, as always, we don't have advertising. So if you like it, please do a couple things. Give us a like and a subscribe. Drop us a review. And if you know someone who find this helpful, please share the podcast. And until next time, this is Brent Sonnek-Schmelz with the FlyWheel Effect. Thank you very much.
Thank you for tuning in to the FlyWheel Effect. Our journey through the intricate world of luxury home services continues to be fueled by your passion for excellence and innovation. If you found value in our conversations today, don't forget to follow us wherever you get your podcasts. More insights and resources. Visit us online at growwithvital.com. Until next time.